Oh, shoot, I just dropped the lapel mic. What's going on, everybody? How are you guys all doing today? I hope this is going to work out. We got a whole new, brand new setup up here. Figure we start off with a little bit of warming up there like that. What's going on, guys? I hope you guys can hear me okay. We got the lapel mic. It is an extremely windy day. Bravo. Thank you very much, Levi. Just a little bit of a standard thing. All right, so as you guys can see, we got the GoPro set up. Dudes, look how good the studio is looking. It's looking really nice. Very happy with that. Oh, hey, that mic sounds pretty good. I like that idea. I like that concept. Just got to make sure that I don't turn my head. You know what I'm saying? So today, guys, we are going to be doing our very, very first live lesson. And we start with some basic stuff, right? The first basic thing of any musician, learning how to read music, guys. Learning how to read music. Oh, man. Whew. It is really cold out today. I'm not going to lie. So many people in here are have taken music lessons, or maybe perhaps have aspirations of learning how to play an instrument of any type. What's up, Hermie, by the way? What is going on? Mongo the Elder, Levi. What's happening, everybody? Oh, whoa, the cam. You like it? It's pretty good, right? It's pretty nice. It's like a nice little setup. I got chat right here. Boom, you guys. You know, I can see the scene over there. I think it looks pretty good. It looks pretty good. You took music lessons, Ariana? Very good, very good. I have to video to see this. Yeah, it's not too bad. I think the scene is working out pretty well. So, yeah. All right, you guys give me feedback as we go, and we'll see how we do. You took violin lessons as well? All right, so what would you guys say if you would rate your musical experience in terms of, like, if you would get a sheet of music in front of you, like right now, today, would you be able to decipher all the things that are on it? Or would you have to have a little bit of a refresher to see what's going on? Oh yeah, you like it, Hermie? You like it? I think it's working out pretty well, guys. I think it's working out pretty well. You take music lessons every day. That's true, actually. It's very true. I want to see how this cam's going to work, guys. Let's take a look over here. Boom, boom, boom. We're going to go to board cam, guys. Board cam. And see how this works. All right, let's take a look. Ooh, look at that. See? We're getting there, guys. We are getting there. All right, so we're going to do a lot of, this is, again, welcome to the classroom, my friends. Welcome to the woodshed. This is the woodshed. This is where we start talking about all the basic stuff. Now this is going to be a video that's going to be all about the basics of things. You need a little refresher. It's been like 14 years since you last picked up a sheet of music. Welcome to that refresher. We're going to be starting with some basic stuff today, which is reading rhythms. Now, we talked about this briefly on another stream. However, we're going to be going a little bit farther into it today. Can you guys see everything okay on the stream? I want to make sure that you guys can read what I'm writing on the board. That's going to be an important bit. Oh my God, I'm so not used to this setup yet. The camera could use a little focus. Yeah, it's a little zoom in. It's a little zoom in. It's the same camera. It's the same. I have one. So it's a one camera sort of thing. But it's a look. Is the rhythm going to get me? Hopefully. Hermie, I think the rhythm has already got you. Yeah, it's the same cam. It's just zoomed in. Welcome, Professor. What's up, Brad Hazard? How are you doing today? All right, so we're going to talk about some basic rhythms. And the basic ones that we're going to be working with today are just all of our primary rhythms that we need to do. This one, and this one. These are also known as quarter note, eighth note, and 16th note. So this is our quarter, this is our eighth note, and this is our 16th note. Now, that's what they look like when they're written out in music, but we'll briefly talk about how they all break down into how to read them. First of all, we're going to take what is known as a measure, which is usually indicated by bar lines, which are the vertical lines that you will see in any sort of staff. Now, next up, we got 4/4. We're going to talk about this. This is our time signature. Time signature. Signature. What's up, Arun? How you doing, man? Hope you're having a great one. And this whole entire thing here is known as a measure. Measure. All right, very good. Now, the measure in 4/4, it means basically two things. This is our very first thing of how to read it. I don't have to click a tweet on this, but MooBot is in the channel. You can run Bang Twitter, I believe. I think I set that up this morning. All right, so check this out, guys. 4/4, the top number is how many beats? Number of beats. And the bottom number is type of note. Type of note that gets the beat. So in this case, it's a 4, which is a quarter note, and 4, which is the number of beats, which is 4. Perfect, guys. Exactly right. Yeah, you guys are nailing it. We're nailing it. All right, we're going to get a little bit of the stuff off the screen. These are the basics. So this is basically our building block, and I'll describe this in a little bit different way. All we need to know right now is this is called a measure. It's the spot that's in between. We know that there are 4 beats in it, and that's all that we're going to start with for now. We'll get into more explanations of that in further videos. Okay, so first thing we're going to describe, I like how I made the snare drum there, is let's start to think about a measure as a big piece of pie. Think about it as like a pizza. You got yourself a pizza. Now, if you don't have any splits, you didn't cut it up into any slices, it's the whole pizza. All right, and in that case, it's also known as a whole note. And that is indicated by this, but we're not going to get too much into that right now. Then if we divide it in half, 1/2 of that slice would be a half note. All right, you kind of see where this is going. We're slicing it up, and that's actually what it's called. If we slice it up one more, this is going to be our basic building block, which is exactly where we're going to start is if we slice it up one more, we have 4 pieces, and that is a quarter note. All right, there we go. So now that we have it sliced up into 4 pieces, our measure is sliced up. We each have one of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's go back to our measure here. If we go back to our 4-4 measure, this is a quarter of the pie, and that's where the quarter note is going to actually, there's going to be 4 of those in the measure. They're written as such. Now, the reason that we start with this is because this is what's also known as our beats, our downbeats. And our downbeats are what everything gets referenced to. So we'll start talking about counting, how to count these quarter notes and how to break down all the reference points. So this, we have our 4-4 measure filled with 4 quarter notes, or if we could think about that as a 4 quarter slices of a pie. We're going to break that down, and those are the counts, surprisingly, are 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's going to be our basic building block of where we put everything in terms of rhythms and measures. Okay, so if we would, for instance, take in this. Be sure to retweet the going live tweet for the prof. He deserves all the support. Thanks, Red Hazard. Appreciate that, man. So, all right, so next up is basically this. When you have a beat to a song, like a lot of times you'll hear it, like, you know, you guys ready for this? It happens all the time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, all right, very good. So that 1, 2, 3, 4 is also known as the downbeat. And that's also what's known as the reference point for where everybody gets on the same page in terms of tempo. All right, so check this out, guys. That is our quarter note. That is the 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, the cool thing about this is when we start dividing this up into smaller bits. You're an awesome teacher. Keep it up. Thanks, Red Hazard. Appreciate it, man. So here's what we got going on. So we have this 1, 2, 3, and 4 is our quarter note reference point. You tried. Did you get it? Was it good? All right. When we start splitting these up, there's going to be 2 little rules that we're going to follow in terms of getting the next bits of rhythm. Number 1 is every time that we divide it, I want you to think about it like this. Let's talk about the parts of the notes. So I'll just take this quarter note. This part right here that I'm kind of writing as a slash is called the note head. A lot of times it'll be written as a circle like this. That is the note head. This is known as the staff, the upper part that's there. So we have a note head and a staff. And if you notice, just like, you know, as a little bit of shorthand, you write it like that. That's usually what you'll see when somebody like writes it by hand. So once we have our note head and we want to divide it even more, so let's go back to our pie here and let's go ahead and cut them up a little bit more. We're going to cut up that pie even more, and now each one of these pieces here is 1/8 of the pie. You got 8 pieces of pizza. You got 8 pieces of pizza. You want 1 piece? Guess what? If there's 8 pieces of pizza in the pie, there are 8 of those notes here. But we only have a reference point for 4. So we're going to have to slice them up into smaller bits. So for this example, we're going to start adding our 8th notes that are the next level down. And a good way to think about it is the same way as the pie. If you take 2 of these 8th notes, here and here, if you put this piece of the pie, that is also a quarter of the pie. So it takes 2 8th notes to make 1 quarter note. If you're familiar with math, that's also how fractions work, guys. So here we go. And we start breaking this down. Now we'll talk about how this is notated next. We're going to take this piece and we're going to have to add in 2 8th notes to it. Now what an 8th note is, we have the note head, then we have the staff, and every time that we slice a piece of pie in half from the quarter note, or slice it in half again, we add a flag. So we have a little bit of a flag just right off the side there. So this is now a note head, 1 staff, 1 flag, and that equals an 8th note. Now it requires 2 of these in the same space of that quarter note. Now the cool thing is that we still have a reference point for 1, 2, 3, and 4 as we go through an entire measure. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And here is a full measure of 8th notes as we all break those parts down. Full measure 8th notes as we go through all the parts there. You captured the flag? Hell yeah. Jazz charts are usually in shorthand form. Jazz charts are a whole thing altogether. Yeah, but I'm going to tell you that right now. But yes, they're always in like that shorthand form. I've seen a lot of stuff like this too, like in jazz charts. This is kind of off topic, but it'll be like stuff like that. You'll see that kind of stuff a lot. It's just like, it's super, super shorthand, but it's like, if you know how to interpret it, then it makes a lot of sense. All right. Slide tackle and hurry me to get the flag back. Okay, we have capture the flag in chat. Maybe that should be our mini game that we play. All right, so check this out, guys. Now we still have all this. Now we divided each one of these quarter notes into two pieces. Go back to our pie. We sliced a quarter of the pie into two different pieces. So now the beginning of those two pieces is still going to maintain the same counts of 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now we're going to add another count in between, so we have a count reference point for how the quarter notes and the eighth notes go. And that count is going to be and, which is notated as a plus sign, but it's pronounced as and. There you go. So in the way we would count this, if you would have a count off, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So here's the deal. When we start splitting the notes, where they are does not change. And that's where our tempo needs to be maintained. In order for you to split them in half, it needs to basically go faster. So back on the drums here a little bit as an example. If you look on the part that's there, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Cool. So we saw the reference points. Or I could do it with two different tones just so you can hear a very, very tight example of how the quarter note references the eighth note. We're going to say this is the quarter note where our downbeat's going to be the entire time. And let's just pick one. Let's pick Tom over here for our eighth note. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So you notice that the quarter notes still remain the same in exactly the same tempo, also known as our reference point. Then we divide it in half, which just happens to be in terms of space exactly in between those two notes. So that takes care of our quarter notes and then our eighth notes. Now the good news is, once you understand that concept, it's easy at that point. Just follow the rule of the flags. Okay, so maybe we want to play a faster rhythm. Ooh, we can go even faster. Let's go ahead and back and let's just kind of move this up. So I'm going to redo all this stuff here. Well, one sec, I did forget one thing. There is some modification to flags that will happen from time to time. Right now you see each individual note has each individual flag, but these can also be grouped together. Now when they get grouped together, it starts to look like this, with a straight line on top. Now a lot of times, and I've seen this with a lot of students as well, that straight line becomes a point of confusion. Okay, is that rhythm different than that rhythm? Here's the thing you always want to ask yourself. Think about the parts of the note again. You have a note head, you have a note staff, and then you have a flag. Now the flag could take many forms, but just think about how many flags, it doesn't matter if it's a squiggly flag or if it's a straight flag, how many flags are touching the staff of this note? How many flags are touching the staff of this note? And this one has one flag. Yes, it's going to the left, but it's still one flag. This one's going to the right, but it's still one flag. So that keeps both of those things still as the eighth note. So there we go. All right, so now we're going to move this up. And in this case, I'm going to write this out as a full measure of grouping up onto this point here for all of our eighth notes. Maybe give myself a little bit more space here too. There's a little shorthand, bump, 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 bump. And we're going to group them up into by beats, just for ease of everything, ease of learning, as it were. Okay, so now we go back to our counts. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now we're going to split it up even further. And now we're going to do that is we're going to add a flag. So again, back to our pizza pie here. We're going to take, we'll do it over here. So this is a whole eighth note. We're going to split that in half again, and this just happens to be a 16th of the pie. So that's one of those things, right? It's so if you notice the numbers so far, it's been 4, 8, 16. 16 pieces, 8 pieces, and 4 pieces. We're splitting it up again, and this is going to be a 16th of the pie. That's 1/16. So I could try to, you know what I could do actually? Yo, this would be cool. Check it out, guys. Watch this. For clarification's sake. Boom, boom, boom. I have colors. Let's go. Oh, it's all taped in. Oh no! Sorry for the tape sounds. It's an unboxing. You didn't even know it. All right, so here is our 16th note. Boom, 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 in the green. And another green here. Our two 16th notes. It takes two 16th notes to make an 8th note, as we talked about before. The 16th note and an 8th note. So these two things together create an 8th note. So now we're going to split it up again, and how we notate that. How we notate that is the most important part about it, because we just got to follow the rule. How many flags do we need to put on it? We're dividing it again by 2. We're basically taking a quarter note, dividing it in half, and then dividing it in half again. Think back to our pizza slice. It starts to make a lot more sense when you think about it as like we're taking parts of this measure. So we're going to add not one flag, but 2 flags. So now we have this thing going here. All right, and we'll stop there for just a moment. Now what we did is we took our 8th note and we added another flag to it, which does cut it in half once again. It's a pretty easy system. And guess what, guys? If I wanted to split this one in half, you know what I do? I add one more flag. Now this gets a little complicated when we start getting down to this, which is, by the way, 30-second notes. But let's talk about how to count our 16 notes now, because now we have another rhythm that's even faster than our 8th notes. Just tuned in and immediately thought math with Raj. It's kind of like that, yeah. But it's notes with Raj. It's notes. Here we go. Oh, by the way, this channel. You guys ready? The Prof. I'm the Prof over here. Because we thought about this, right? This is a small hiatus, right? Small hiatus. Raj is my video game personality, and this channel doesn't have any video games on it. So I was like, is that really the name? Is that the persona that we're portraying? We'll call it The Prof. The Prof is online. I got to remember to start saying that too, because I'm so used to be called Raj. All right, guys, here we go. Back to it. We're breaking it down. We have another rhythm that we're breaking it down to, and now we need to have other counts for that as well. So in this case, the 1 and the same way that we did the quarter note and the and are going to remain in the same spot. And then we're going to have extra counts in between. And those counts are E and And that is E and Is it this one? Is it the one with the U? A would be long A, which is a long one. It'd be yeah, it's Or you could also say like you're not sure. There we go. We should get you the Cerebro line from X-Men. Welcome, Professor. Oh, that'd be kind of cool. Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. All right, so we have E and and. Now, the only reason that these counts exist and why they are what they are is because they're easy to say quickly. They don't blend together. If anybody has taken music lessons in the past, there was a huge thing of this tita thing. If anybody has anybody done titas? Was anybody taught tita, all that kind of stuff? The problem with tita is it's really tough to say those things very loud. They're very long syllabic terminology, so it's hard to put a exact point on it. Versus one E and is very sharp and it's very short, so you can count this quite quickly. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and. And again, if you notice as I count through that, the reference points for the 1, 2, 3, and 4 still remain the same, and the reference points for the and count still remain the same. We're just dividing it in half one more time. Now the same rule applies when it comes down to grouping. These are all individual 16th notes, which by the way, that's the 16th note that we're on right now. 16th slice of the pie, 16th part of the measure. When we do the groupings for these, and I'll just kind of do it like this. I know it's going to get a little tight as we start to split it up. As we do the groupings for the 16th notes, it starts to look a little complicated because we start grouping them up in 4 notes at a time. But still, that all remains the same. And the thing you always have to ask yourself is, you have vowels flow faster than consonants. Exactly right. The thing you have to ask yourself every time, if you have a question about a note, I'm not sure, is that a 16th note? Is that an 8th note? Is that a quarter note? Ask yourself this. How many flags does the note have? Look at the individual note. Let's take this one, for example. and we look up the staff and we go, oh, there are 2 lines attached to it. Now in this note in particular, they go from the left side and the right side of the staff, but that doesn't mean it doesn't mean that there's 4. It means that there's only 2 flags attached to it. So I want to briefly talk about that real quick. This is the note staff. Don't worry about the note head. This is a line attached to it. This is also a line attached to it. This is also a line attached to it. I'm going to get that like teachers. You ever had a teacher that had got like chalk on their fingers all the time? I got to use the eraser. It's very like that. That's also a flag attached to it. So it could be from the left, it could be through, or it could be to the right. All of those things equal 1 flag. What's up, Deminer? How you doing today, man? And also, it doesn't matter if it's straight or if it's curved or if it's super fancy and like olden, you know, concerto script that looks like this. Like this. Oh, wow, it's horrible. No, not quite like that, but it doesn't really matter. That's still 1 flag, guys. All of that is 1 flag. Anybody got any golf? Here we go. Anyway. All right, cool. Moving right along. So that is one of the things that you always want to ask yourself if you have a question about a note. How many flags are touching the staff of that note? It'll make more sense when you start getting to more complex rhythms. It looks like par 3. I think so, Himbo. I think so. All right, so the whole measure is 2E and a. 3E and a. I'm not going to bother writing all this. Well, I will write this all out, actually. 4E and a. Boop, 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 boop. One of the other cool things about these lessons that works out pretty well is you start seeing how to write musical notation on shorthand. I went a little bit downhill because I had to lean a little bit to get to the side of the board, but nothing too major. All right, so let's talk about it then, guys. We got our quarter notes. We got our 8th notes. Then we got our 16th notes. Every single one of these has the same reference point of 1, 1, 1. 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, 4, 4, 4. All of them are exactly the same reference points or the beat within our measure. Those reference points do not move. They're always going to be at the same spot. You should play trumpet so I can go along with this to an extent. Very good. Found the sound clip dumped in the lobby. Thank you very much. Somebody wants to you were on Bang Discord. Yes, I did say Bang Discord. In the chat, you guys could jump over to the Discord server. We're going to have all kinds of stuff going over there with drum discussions and all those types of things too. Never played anything other than rest and 30-second or smaller. I played sax in high school. There you guys go. Join us off stream for all things drumming. All right, beautiful. So let's take this to the drums, and we'll do a little playing example of these portions. So here we go, guys. Here we go. If you guys haven't seen it yet, those just joining, the full cam. The full cam. I'll count as we go through, and we'll go. Bada bing, bada boom. There we go, guys. Now you can see all the things. So if I count this stuff out again, with our quarter notes, our 8th notes, and our 16th notes, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1. One more time, a little bit slower. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1. Those are all the things. You want to put all the things in the right place. So that is the basic building blocks of all our rhythms. And the cool thing is, and I always tell students, this is pretty much all you really need to know to start getting a basic understanding of music. Because a lot of things, no matter how complex they get, are broken down into a lot of these pieces. It's a matter of how to interpret what's written on the page into sound. And that brings me to the next point, is written music. Written music. Let's go back to the board scene here, guys. Written music, and the important thing about this concept. The important thing about written music is to understand its purpose. I talk about purpose a lot, and whatever it may be. The purpose of written music is so that we have a common language. Say I have a nice thought, I have a nice idea, and I want to share it with a friend. I write it down in our language of choice. Most of us hear English, right? But whatever language that might be, you write it down in English to convey a thought in writing. It's not the writing or like, oh, You know, I saw that there was an A. Your A has a weird thing on it when you wrote it out. It's not so much about that. It's about conveying the thought. And in the same kind of process of that, written music, this isn't the art form, so to speak. This is just a way to convey sound to another musician. That's all that it is. So just keep that in mind. A lot of people have like that governing thing of, oh, it's the notes on the page. It have to be the notes on the page. Now, there's certain things that has to be there, like a full orchestra. Yeah, you probably should play the notes that are on the page. But if you're going to be creating and you're going to be experimenting, sometimes you use the notes on the page as a guidance point, and then you could branch off and do some extra crazy stuff with it. All right, guys, so this is all basic points of our building blocks of music. Slices of the pie. We'll just talk briefly about the two other things that I did skip over, and the reason is because we want to reference everything to our basic building block of the quarter note. So let's go back to the measure here, and there are notes that are of a larger variety within the measure. For instance, as we talked about before, the whole pie, so some note that does take up all 4 quarter notes, and there is half the pie, or a half note. So here we go, back to our measure here. We're going to write 3 measures out. 1, 2, 3, just like this. Can you guys hear the wind, by the way? It's super windy. Again, our time signature is still all going to be 4/4. And we'll talk about our quarter notes on the bottom. Counts are 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now our half note would be 2 quarter notes together. So we're kind of going to do the same thing that we just did in reverse. If I add 2 quarter notes together, or half of the measure, I get a half note. Now the half note is an open note head with 1 staff. And that takes up 2 beats, but it only gets played on the first one. So you have 1, it takes up the space for count 2, but doesn't have it there. Got Right Hazard, have a great one, and thank you very much, man. I really do appreciate it. So we have 1 and 2, and then again, because it is half of the pie, it takes 2 halves to make 1 whole. Make sense? So there's 2 halves that are there. That also lands on the 3, but takes up the space for 4. Kind of following all that? You're getting 50 to 70 mile an hour wind gusts? Oh, it's windy out, guys. It is very, very windy out. Very good. Now let's talk about the last note that we're going to talk about today, which is the whole note, which takes up the whole measure. Now all that is an open note head. That's the whole pie. And it's easy to remember because it's literally a circle. That's it. It's the whole pie. It's just 1 circle. So that's the easiest one to remember. The whole pie is a circle. Now that gets played on count 1, but it does have all of the spaces for all the other quarter notes. So back to the reiteration here, guys. We're going to take all of this as our whole pie, half the pie, a quarter of the pie, which is our big reference point, guys. Remember that quarter is the reference point. If we divide it again, we go to 1/8 notes, which is a single flag, and we divide it again, we go to 16th notes. Those are our basic building blocks in music, guys. And guess what? By getting a concept and understanding of that, think the pie, you've learned how to break down the rhythms of most things that will be written down. Not everything, because here's the one rule of music. Here's the one rule of music. There is no rules. And a lot of people study theory, and a lot of people have studied theory over the years, listen to other people and other musicians, and they go, I wonder, can I break the rules? And there's always songs that break the rules. They're going to be like, no, we're going to do something different. But the thing that remains constant is all of this. And guess what, guys? 1, 2, 3, 4 remains constant. You still need to have a beat no matter how crazy you go with it. That beat can speed up, it can slow down, it can do all kinds of things. But the rule of music is that there's never a hard rule that's always. It's never always, always. Or it's like never, always, never. What did I say? It's never always, never. That's what it is. So yes, guys, there we go. Now here's the cool thing, guys. So that's half. That is half of the notation. Does anybody know what the other half might be that we need to discuss today? That's an important bit. An important bit. We have our whole pie. We have our half pie. We have our quarter of the pie, 1/8 pie, and 1/16 of the pie. And if you want to divide that even further, we'll do this one real quick. For all the computer guys out there in the Twitch land, you guys ready for this? We start breaking this down and start adding flags. We go quarter, right? 1 quarter. We add a flag, 8. We add a flag, 16. We add a flag, 32. We add a flag, oh my goodness, 64. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 flags, 128. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ooh, 256. Add another one. 512. Are these numbers starting to sound a little familiar? Are these numbers starting to sound a little familiar for computer people out there? You order a RAM chip. Now, if you order a RAM chip that has 512, I'm sorry, that's a little old at this point. But if you take these numbers all the way up, hey, it's a gig. So there you go. It's also based on the same number system, which honestly, I have to say that that's one of the reasons that there might be a correlation. There's a lot of people that are in music that love video games or love computers. Like there's been so many people that I ended up marching with that ended up in a computer job somewhere. And I it's not so much like it's a theory, but it's sort of like, if you understand this concept, it's also, oh, it's the same sort of base. So easy numbers to remember. Now, the other half that we got to do, guys, the other half that we have to do is correlating with the notes. Today I learned how drummers get gigs. Oh yeah? Support the players. That's going to be there's going to be a whole lesson on just that, Hermie, by the way. There's a whole lesson on what to do as a drummer to get the show, to get the gig. All right, so we have the notes themselves, the notes that you play on. However, yeah, exactly, Deminer. Yeah, exactly. By the way, if you keep talking about pie, I'm so hungry. I know I'm hungry too, actually. I'm talking about this big pizza pie. There's notes that you play, but there's also things that we need to take up a space to say, hey, you don't play on this spot. Now this one gets a little bit trickier because the symbols are a little stranger. However, there's a correlation for all the things that we just did. There's a correlation for whole. There's a correlation for half, and a correlation for quarter, eighth, and 16th. And we'll just go to that point because that's all you really need to know. I'll explain why in a minute. We have the whole, half, quarter, eighth, and 16th. Now the notes, we'll call them the anti-notes. The note to say, don't play here, is called a rest. The whole rest, if you're on a normal 5-line staff for perhaps whatever, it's like underneath, it's a bar that is underneath the line. That is what that is. The half rest, actually I'll just do it like that. Oh. I need that old school like music teacher thing. You guys remember the chalkboard? It's like this this wire mesh that had like spaces for 5 pieces of chalk, and they could just go and make a staff like that. Inner nerd coming out. A little pie, indeed, 3.14. Half note is very, very similar. In this case, it could be on the 5-line staff, or it can be on a single line staff. It doesn't matter. The block with 5 wires. Exactly. You guys know what I'm talking about. All right. It's like a top hat. It's like the whole is the bottom and the half is the top. It's just, this is one of those, like if you had a math class, it's like, all right, you know what? This is just one you got to memorize. And it kind of is. But a good way to think about it is like bottom is lower. Bottom is lower, so bottom is bigger. Because you like big butts and cannot lie. So the bottom is bigger, so that is whole rest and half rest. Those are kind of the special cases. You're not going to see them too often, especially in drum music, but you may see them in other notation portions. This one you'll see a lot, like if you play triangle in the orchestra. 36, 2, 3, 37, 38, 4, bing. Yeah, that's called triangle in the orchestra. All right, now we're going to go to another special case now, which is our quarter rest. Our quarter rest is, in a shorthand, looks like that. It's kind of like a 3. I always look at it as a 3. They also can look like this or like that. There's a couple little methods, but if you see like a squiggly line, I can't quite do it how they like notate it in the music. It's like that kind of. But basically, this is some shorthand, but all of these are exactly the same thing. These are all quarter rests. A good way to put it is like, is there a squiggly line? Little squiggly line. That's a quarter rest. All of those are a quarter rest. You'll see all that kind of stuff. So squiggly line looks like a 3, kind of takes up the space of our quarter notes, and a full measure of that would take up the counts of 1, 2, 3, and 4. And those notes correlate to our quarter notes, which is our single staff notes. I need a whole rest after I see the bottom, like, damn. Yeah, exactly. You need a whole rest right there. Perfect. All right, now we're going to go to eighth notes. Now, this is where the special rules start to take place, and I'll give you the easiest way to remember. The truth is that these 3, boom, 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 are memorization points. You need to memorize what those 3 are. What a quarter rest is, what a half rest is, and what a whole rest is. From this point on, I'll give you the easiest way to start breaking down 8th, 16th, and so on. 32, 64, 128, all those things break down the exact same way. We'll start like this. We'll start with a very simple 8th note with a flag. And what I'm going to do is, instead of having an 8th rest, I want you to think about this in terms of staff. If I do a reverse and literally flip this over to be symmetrical, I'm going to have a staff with 1 flag on it, but in this case, no note head. Okay, so it's literally reversed with no note head. It's still a staff with 1 flag. And it kind of gets modified ever so slightly. There'll be a little bit of a dot a lot of times, a little bit of this, and a little bit of this. But I want you to think about it like that. This is the staff, and that's the flag. So you have a staff with 1 flag, but in this case, when it's reversed like this, it's a rest. Note head. Note head. Oh my God, I just popped the mic. So, all right, there's the note head. All right, cool. And guess what? The same rules apply as we start breaking these down even further. So we start saying, adding flags. So our 8th rest again. Note head with 1 flag, that's my shorthand for it. And they correlate to 1 and 2 and etc., etc. We're going to add a, for the 16th note, we're going to add another flag to it. Or a lot of times you'll see it like this, is a more proper way, I should say, is like that. But think about it the same way. Note, we've got the staff, no note, and 2 flags, which equals the 16th note. I hope that all makes sense to everybody. That's the breakdown of the rests. Now the cool thing is you put all kinds of different combinations of all these things together. Let's just do like some small examples for some rhythms. We can take quarter rest and quarter notes and put them together to make up some sort of, basic sort of, I'm gonna say beat, but a rhythm. So if we put a quarter note on our count 1, here's where we're gonna talk about the most important thing when you're reading music. All right, chat, are you ready for your quiz? This is the quiz. I have a quarter note on count 1. I'm gonna write a 64th note. What count is this? Tell me what count this is right here. That's the important one. I will wait for the stream delay to catch up. What count is this note on? That's the important bit, guys. I'm gonna get some coffee right here. I haven't had a sip of coffee in a bit. So if this is on count 1, it's a quarter note. This one over here, although it's a 64th note, which is really complicated, it is actually on count 2. It's on count 2. Now, why is that? Here's the way when you read music. The note that you're currently on, I'm on beat number 1. I'm on count, it's on 2. Yeah, you got it, Levi. Levi's got it. So we have this quarter note that's on count 1. This is the note that we're currently on. Now, the note that we're currently on and the beat that we're currently on tells us where the next one is. That's the really important thing. So it doesn't matter how complicated what comes up here. It's still gonna, this one tells us where that one starts. All right, so cool. That is an important bit. Now, instead of doing a 64th note, which gets a little bit complex, we're gonna do a rest. And then we're gonna do a quarter note and a quarter note. So we're still taking up the space for all 4 beats inside the measure. But we are now taking out a note, or a better way to think about it is not, I don't play during that space. It's that space is telling me not to play a note. The space becomes super important. The moment when you forgot to put the nice purple button above to make it green, make sure you slap that follow button. Thank you very much, Deminer. Do appreciate that. Do appreciate that very much, man. All right, guys. And so here's this. There's that. We're going to go back to drum cam, and we're going to play this very simple rhythm. That one right there. All right. Numpad for Raj eventually, right, guys? All right, so rhythm right here. Numpad for the prof. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. All right, cool. So this rhythm right here, we got our count off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, rest, 2, up. We'll do that again, this time with better counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, rest, 3, 4. Wireless numpad? Maybe a wireless numpad would be good. So what we're doing is we're still taking up the counts for 2. And a lot of times when you do this in the beginning, you say rest instead of the count. And the reason that you do that is so you're still giving it an emphasis. 1, rest, 3, 4. When you get a little bit more advanced, you think about the space that's there, but you still count it. Or like 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wherever the rest may be. All right, so let's take this a little bit more advanced, and we're going to start putting in a little bit of eighth note rests. Now we're going to talk about some interesting things that happen. Check this out, guys. We are going to take our rhythms. Oh my God. I'm very wired, by the way, when we're here. All right, good. Back to the board. Here's a very interesting thing. This is going to be, I'm going to write something that's what's known as bad musical form when you're writing it. But we'll see how this all breaks out. We're going to do an eighth note. Then we're going to do an eighth note rest. By the way, this is an important note actually as well. That the difference between rest and notes, typically your rests are smaller. You're not going to see like note and then a rest. Although it's technically right, that's probably not how you're going to see it. Then we have a note, then a rest, then a note, and then a rest, a note, and then a rest. All right, so now as we start to break all this down, we start reading the rhythms. It gets a little bit more complicated because you're not just breaking down like, okay, I'm just playing all straight eighth notes, or I'm all playing all straight quarter notes. We don't have like 1, 2, 3, and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. You have to kind of break it down like there might be some combinations of this and some combinations of that. So in this case, we go, okay, we need to identify, first of all, what kind of notes we're dealing with, or more importantly, what kind of note that we're on. So in this case, we're going to start in the beginning of count 1. We always start on count 1. First thing you see when you get to a measure, the first thing is count 1 every single time. And I go, okay, I'm on count 1. I see a note. It's got a note head. It's got a staff, and it's got 1 flag to it. Okay, that's an eighth note. How do I count my eighth notes? Oh, that's the 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, so I know this is going to take up the space for 1 eighth note. Dude, Levi, thank you so much, man. Really enjoying today's stream. Thank you. Thank you so much, Levi. Can we get some hearts in the chat of whatever variety, by the way? Really do appreciate that, dude. First tip on the channel for Levi. Thank you so much, man. So we know that we're dealing with eighth notes at this point right here. And so we go, okay, what's the next eighth note count from the one that I'm on? We have 1. The next eighth note count would be an and count. All right, so we go to the and count. All right, cool. Now we're here. What do we see when we get to the and count? Oh, I see a rest. Oh, this is a rest, but it's got no note head. It's got 1 staff and 1 flag. Okay, so I'm dealing with an eighth note rest. It's going to take up 1 eighth note space. I'm on an and count right now. The next eighth note count that I'm going to go to, in this case, would be 2. And then this is the fun thing that happens when you start to read music. You go, you know what? I've seen that before. I don't have to break this down anymore. I know exactly what that is. I just did that over here. Okay, that's that. That's that. Okay. Boom, 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 boom. Full eighth note counts that are there. Now this is what's known as poor musical writing form, and you're going to see this quite a bit on, we'll say, test pieces of music that are built to be difficult to read, that you have to interpret it, so it intentionally takes you out of general patterns. So, but this is it is a pattern. You recognize the pattern. You have the eighth notes, but when we all break it down, we still have, all right, so the notes that we actually play are 1, 2, 3, and 4, but there's written rhythms for all the other parts. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. There's breakdowns for all these other points, but we don't actually play them. Now you may ask yourself, why would you ever do this? Why would you ever do this in this form? Let's talk about the notes themselves a little bit, because we talk about what parts of the pie they get sliced up to, but that also takes up the entire piece of the pie. I'll give you an example. If I put a quarter note on 1, and then I'll just put a rest on 2, this quarter note, if you have an instrument that has a tone to it, takes up that entire space. So it would be 1, 2, 1 off, 1 off. This one is not the case. This length of the note is only 1/8 note. So it stops on the and count. So it is a rest. It's an empty space, where this is a full space. 1 off, 1 and, 1 off, 1 off, 2 off, 3 off, 4 off. But this is still bad musical form, and I'll explain why, because there's other marks to do that a little bit better, if that makes sense, to tell somebody to do that. This right here, and we're going to go back to that same concept we talked about a little bit earlier, which is the concept of, what is the point of written music? The point of written music is to get the sound that you have in your head conveyed to somebody else to reproduce that sound. And difficulty of reading is not the best way to go about that. You want to make it as easy as possible to read. And by the same stretch of the imagination, here's the weird thing about music, guys, and this is why I really stress this to students all the time, stress this to students. Reading music is just like learning your alphabet. That's all you need to do. Now, there's plenty of us out there. I am definitely guilty of this. I am not the best speller in the world. Okay? I spell things wrong a lot. But I can still convey the message that I'm trying to get across. The same thing goes for sort of music. You don't have to know all the crazy stuff, or maybe your reading skills aren't that good, but being able to interpret the idea and the concept is the same as in being able to interpret and relay the concept of the sound. Important bits. So there we go. That's the explanation of that. Dude, Bongo donated $20. Thank you very, very much, man. I don't know if the sounds in my head are safe for polite company. Thank you very much, Bongo. Really appreciate that, guys. To be honest, who can actually spell correctly anyway? Spell checker. Spell checker can. Although it does put up some interesting things. I learned, I was trying to tag iChun in a tweet, and my phone was like, you are not typing that. Thank you very, very much, Bongo. I do need to correct that. I just noticed that the size of it was just a little too large. So we'll have to, so we can correct and see all this stuff. But thank you guys so much. All right, guys. And by the way, that all goes to the drum set stream, the actual set that we're going to be getting for this. All right, cool. Now let's take something a little bit more complicated. We're going to grab all of this and let's start to mix and match these rhythms, because you can do that. The only rule is, when you're writing out a rhythm, is if we go back to our old 4/4 time signature thing, that's like you have the whole pie. Now you have to account for the whole pie. You can't just say, I can spell good. You relayed the message, though. You relayed that message, Hambo. That's exactly what it is. All right, so check this out, guys. You still have to take up the entire pie. You got to make sure that all of it's accounted for. Otherwise, it'd be like, yo, I ordered this pizza. There's like 3 slices missing in this pizza. You wouldn't pay for that, would you? If a pizza came to your door and you opened it up and there's 3 slices missing, you'd be like, really? Really, dude? Like that? This is not happening. Perfect, back it up, perfect. All right, so check this out. We're gonna take up the entire piece of the pie, but we're gonna do some extra kind of stuff in it. and maybe something with a little bit better musical form, if you guys know what I'm saying. All right. Now we have a little bit of a mix. We have a little bit of quarter notes, we have a little bit of eighth notes, we have some mixed rhythms. So we need to sort of ask ourselves as we go down through and reading the music, starting on the measure, first thing that's always in the measure, count 1 as we squeak it. Then we ask ourselves all the time, remember that concept that we just talked about a little bit? The note that you're on tells you where the next one is. And that's an important thing as you're reading left to right and just telling you where the next portion happens. We're on count 1. We've got a quarter note. We learned earlier that a quarter note takes up 1 beat. So the next quarter note would be 2. So okay, that takes up count 1. It gets us to count 2. Okay, now we're on count 2. What do we see here? Oh, okay, on count 2, we have an eighth note, but it's a rest. All right, so I'm on count 2. What's the next eighth note count? All right, that would be an and. Okay, so that's the and. I'll talk about this briefly because this is where, if I want to reference just this note, you say that what the count is, and then of the beat that it's in. All right, for instance, this is the and of 2. And of 2. Does that make sense? The count that you're trying to reference, and then what beat it's in. The 2 takes up all the space between 2 and 3. So any count that's in between here, it's the blah, blah, blah of 2. Of 2. How to reference that note. Alabama reading test. That's pretty funny. All right, guys, there we go. So now we are on the and count of 2. We're on the and of 2. And we look at the note that we have and we go, okay, we got it. We got a note head, we got a staff, and we have a flag. All right, very good. So we're on an eighth note. All right, very good. I'm on the and of 2. The next eighth note count would be 3. All right, so we go to 3. Okay, cool. We're there. Oh, this is starting to look a little familiar. I've seen this before. Don't be fooled though, guys. When you start seeing a bunch of eighth notes, quarter notes, and rests, make sure to kind of do this because there are some tricky rhythms out there that even if you think you see the same pattern, it's not the same one that was there before. I'll give you an example of that, and this is going to be a little bit more on the advanced side, but I'll give you an example of that after this one. So now we're on 3, and we have, oh, there is a rest on 3. It's an eighth note rest. I've seen that before. I now know it. Now we're on the and count. We're moving over 1 eighth note count. We're on the eighth note count. Very good. I see another eighth note that moves us 1 more eighth note count, which takes us to 4. And we go to 4, and I see a quarter note. I know that takes up a 1 beat. It takes up the rest of the measure. It takes us all the way to 1. Bam, we nailed it, guys. We nailed it. We got it. Onto the drums, playing the rhythm. We got, let me put the marker down. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. Offsetting the pattern by a beat or 2 to mess with people. I'm going to show you a very common one, and it's the only. Here's the thing, Mechadom. Yes, there happens a lot in music. It happens quite a bit in music that people are like, I'm going to make it hard to read, right? I'm going to make that the challenge. Really stupid questions on the Virginia. Exactly. I'm going to say this, guys in chat. I'm going to try to keep this channel PG, but I'm going to be a little lax on the rules for that, if that makes sense. Not over excessive, but I'm not going to say them. Does that make sense? Are we good with that? Just so anybody that wants to see this can, you know, keep it PG, so to speak. All right, so very good. So now that we have all this stuff, we're going to talk about one of the very, very common ones. I'm going to go ahead and erase this so I get a little bit more space over here too. And I tell you what, we got all this. Everybody understands the concepts, how to say the and, the e, the and the 16 notes. Just a little bit more space here. Keep it classy. PG chat, yep, exactly. The way I figure, guys, is this is an educational stream, and I don't want to be like, you're not 18, you can't get educated. I'm like, wait a minute, that's kind of when education mandatory stuff stops. So yeah, you can be educated under 18. All right, so here we go. Check it out, ladies and gentlemen. Here is, all right, remember what I just said? This is Rhythms 101. All right, this is now Rhythm Course 312. This is jumping way ahead for example purposes only, e.g. purposes. This is rhythms 312. This is a little bit more advanced, guys. It's a concept known as syncopation. Syncopation. It's a very common thing that needs to be have to learn how to read this. All right, so here is a rhythm. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, chat, what do you think? I would like you to figure out, tell me the counts of that measure. If you can't see it, it's an eighth note, a quarter note, an eighth note, and a quarter note. What are the counts? I'll give you guys just a little bit of a minute. I just paid to the swear jar. Perfect, Bongo. Thank you very much. You paid to the swear jar. That's right, man. That's right. Anybody know? Counts for that measure. Remember, this is reading 312. We're no longer in the 101 course at this point. This is a good example for reading too. This is actually a good example for reading as well. All right, guys. Now this is a syncopation. You'll see this a lot in like jazz charts, things like that. So it's something that you have to learn how to read. But again, when you're breaking things down, always break it down. The note that you're on, where does the next one happen? That's all it's about that. I was asleep for the first hour of the lesson. Oh my God. Check it out, guys. We always start on count one. We're going to take the same rules that we did before. Count one. I see an eighth note. Okay, cool. I see an eighth note on count one. That means I'm going to move over one eighth note count. Okay, cool. We go to the and count. On the and count, I see a quarter note. Oh, wait a minute. Hey, what's up, Riz? How you doing, man? What is happening, dude? So on the and count, you see a quarter note, and you go, wait a minute. That's not a quarter note count. Wait, there's a quarter note, eighth note, and, wait. Okay, this is a little tricky. This is a little weird. All right, let's go back to our slice of the pie. I'll kind of explain syncopation in a different kind of way. If I split our slice of the pie up into 8 pieces, we're going to say that maybe this section here, we'll use some colors for this, I think, is all of count 1. So this section here would be all of count 1. And then we could say, I don't know, how about a nice blue? We're going to take a nice blue. Take a nice blue right here. And we're going to say this is going to account for all of count 2 as these slices of the pie. This is all of count 2. Now, you can take, not bad, buddy. Hope you're all good and well. Doing very well, man. Doing very well. Now, that works well for like the quarter notes and the basic breakdown, but you could still take a slice of the pie. So instead of taking these 2 pieces, what if we took these 2 pieces? Okay, it still equals a quarter note, but it's kind of like in the middle of the 2 things. It still takes up the same amount of space. So it gets a little bit trickier when you do that. So you ready? Will these be up for VOD? Bongo 100%. And I plan on YouTubing it as well, so that's going to be a thing. I think I'm going to have to break it down into a lot of different chunks for YouTube, but it will definitely be there. So check this out, guys. So if this was like the green would be count 1, and the blue is for count 2, but we have this weird thing that's like, instead of taking those 2 pieces, we're taking 1 green and 1 blue. Oh, that's a little funky. But guess what? It takes up the exact same amount of space. Now, the cool thing about the quarter note, here's the cool bit, that we can break it down into its individual parts. How much VOD can you store as a non-partner? Not as much as a partner. Let's work on that, shall we? But yeah, I'll get them up. I'm actually going to pull them down so we have the videos too. And this is where my coordination breaks from the ability to keep the beat. Oh, on this one, this is where it breaks down. Yeah. All right, so here's the easiest way to do that. If you run into a situation where you have a note that you're like, wait a minute, that's a quarter note. That's not a quarter note count though. You know what you do? It's like, you remember that whole like least common denominator kind of thing? You sort of do the same thing. Okay, that's not a quarter note count, but it's an eighth note count. So I need to think to myself, okay, how many eighth notes does that quarter note equal? Oh, right, it equals 2. So that's going to take up 2 quarter note or 2 eighth note spaces, the same space as the quarter note. All right, good. So let's think about it that way. All right, we'll take the first eighth note. We're on the and count. The next eighth note would be 2. And then I have another eighth note because it equals 1 more for that too. That moves us to the and. Oh, so the next count is actually an and. Does that make sense, guys? If a note falls on like not its proper count, as we say, that you can break it down into a smaller part where it is to its counts to figure out how far does it go. And guess what, guys? We go right up to the next thing here where we have another quarter note on the and count. We know that this breaks down into 2 eighth notes. So we are on the and of 2, by the way. We skipped over count 2. But this breaks down into 2 eighth notes again. And okay, we have 2 eighth notes that are there. Let's go with the and count. I'm on the and of 2. 1 eighth note will take us to 3. Another eighth note will take us to the and of 3. All right, very good. And then we have an eighth note. Oh, thank God, we actually have an eighth note for this, right? So we have an eighth note on the and of 3 that takes us 1 eighth note space, which puts us to 4. And that's called syncopation. And syncopation, really what that means is that you see this space and this space, those are our downbeats and they're not notated in any way. Now, you may ask yourself, well, why write things this way? Why would this doesn't make any sense? Didn't Raj say earlier, or didn't the prof say earlier that it's all about making things easy to read, making things easier to read for everybody? And yes, I did. But this is the important one to learn how to remember to read this, because this is one of the few cases where you're going to see this written this way for the purposes of the note durations that we talked about before. I could write this out in a much easier way to read by breaking it down into the beats. Now, rhythmically, this is exactly the same. This is 1 and 4. But this time we're writing it out so you could see where all the beats are. Still the exact same rhythmical start points. So in this case, if I counted it out, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So we have all those things kind of lining up. Now the only difference is, and why it's written this way, is 9 times out of 10, it's because it's not a drum part. It's because it's a horn part. You'll see this a lot in like jazz music as notation. And so back to the note durations. This on a horn would be bop, 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 bop. This on a horn goes bop, 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 bop. Kind of get the difference? So this is about note durations, not about attack points. And because we need to learn how to read this, even as drummers, because you need to learn how to interpret this, because this is what you're playing along to. And a little bit more, this is a very, very common thing that you will see all the time in a bunch of jazz music. And again, this is kind of jumping a little bit on the advanced side, but it's not that you have to learn how to read this right now. It's understanding the concept of there's always out of bounds portions when it comes to music. You'll see this very, very commonly on a drum score. Here, I'll just do something like this. It'd be like jazz. And you'll see this. Something like that. So we'll break this down a lot more further, but basically here's a syncopated rhythm that you need to know how to interpret what's going on. But this will be like a jazz chart for drums. You'll see that quite a bit. All right, guys. All right. I will open it up now to, I did a lot of stuff in 101. We'll do a quick review on 101, not on syncopation. That's a whole large lesson. Large lesson on syncopation. So we have our whole note, which is a whole pie. Whole note rest is underneath. That is 1 out of 1, or the whole note. Our half note is an open note head with 1 staff, and the top hat above. Remember, bottom is bigger, guys. Bottom is bigger. We have our quarter note, which is a note head, one staff, squiggly line. So this is the notes, this is the rest. We have our eighth note, and this is where we start breaking down to all the different, we start doing the same rule as we start dividing it more and more and more. While I'm doing this, by the way, if you guys have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. I'll be happy to answer anything that anybody would like clarification on. There's the eighth note rest. We have our 16th note. 2 flags for the rest. So there's our note heads, and there is all of our rests that correspond to all those things. Our basic building blocks of music. That is Rhythms 101, guys. Rhythms 101. In a nutshell. In a nutshell. I think I'll just make sure that we have this, at least on the board, just to kind of show the common groupings of how these would work together. Very good. Very good. Awesome. There we go. Rhythms 101. Think about your pies. Think about the pieces of the pie. Get a lot more for that. Dudes, I'm going to take a quick little break. When I come back, we're going to get into some other stuff. Actually, I got a few other lessons that I'd like to start to get into. This one I wanted to make sure that we get off right off the bat because this is a big building block of a lot of other things. So, all right, I'll be back in just a few short moments, dudes. Don't go anywhere. There's a lot more Professor coming up. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. We have returned. We are back. Got to work on some scene work here, but it's all good. Welcome to lesson number 2 of the day, where we're going to be talking about how to hold your drumsticks. Guys, it's going to be an important one if you want to get into drumming all together. What is the stick position? What is the right way to hold the sticks? What are the various things that we can go through? I'm going to update our title here just briefly. Just give me one moment, guys. It is live after all, so there's always a bunch of things. I'll get the production team to do this in the future. Is that right, guys? Yeah? No? Okay, I'll do it myself then. It's all cool. It's all good. All right, so this is going to be a live lesson. In this case, we're going to be doing how to hold the drumsticks. How to hold drumsticks. How to hold drumsticks. Ba-bam. Drumsticks. Not drumsticks, drumsticks. Drumsticks. And we'll go ahead and save that and update it. Boom. Very good, guys. And thanks for sticking around with me here on the Twitches.tv. Yeah, production. Yeah, exactly. Interns are currently at school. That's right. They're currently at school. The production interns are at school at the moment. All right, guys. This is our main drumming scene that we have here. And we're going to be doing a little bit of pad work today, which is always a good thing. But we're going to talk about how to hold the drumsticks and the various different ways to do that. Now, we'll talk about the parts of the stick itself. I'll get this up to the camera so we can get a good view on the old Gold Pro there. We have the stick. All right, yes, it's a piece of wood. All right, yeah, it's crazy. Everybody is curious, I'm using, these are 7As. These are Vic Firth 7As. These currently are the Peter Erskine signature model. I like the bead on this a little bit. So we'll talk about the drumstick itself. You have the butt of the stick, which is the round part. You have the tip of the stick, which is usually it goes to the narrow part, and there's the very tip. And then there's the shoulder here, and then there's the shaft. So you have the butt, the shaft, the shoulder, and the tip. That's right. Make your innuendo jokes now. All right, so there we go. So now when we start holding the stick, and where do we want to grip it? It's all about getting the right amount of rebound for your effort. It's about ergonomics. It's about getting all those things. There's a nice little point that we want to do this thing. You can almost think of it like a seesaw. So you have a fulcrum point of which the stick wants to kind of bounce and rotate, and there's definitely a sweet spot for that. A lot of times, and in particular on Vic Firth products, they had this little American flag right there. Now, a lot of times that American flag is almost always the nice little sweet spot where you want to hold the drumstick. So now, we'll take something called, you love that shoulder action? Ooh, right there, that shoulder. It's just where it starts to taper. It's right there where it starts to taper on the top of the stick. Now, again, not all drum companies have any sort of indicator, but every stick has a nice fulcrum point, and I'll show you how to get the right rebound for it. So the way that we want to do is you want to think about it like pinching between a index finger and your thumb. Just a little boop, 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 you know, pinch there. You want to find that fulcrum point, and you want to pinch between those two things. Two things that you want to do is you want to make sure that your thumb is in line with the stick, and that you're gripping with your index finger, not like a violin bow. So you see this like big gap that's here. You want to kind of close that gap, so there's no gap in between here. So you're kind of holding it between the first and second knuckle of your index finger. So you have the thumb, which is directly in line with the stick, and you have between the first and second knuckle of your index finger. This becomes your fulcrum point, or the point of which the stick starts to bounce. There we go. Now to find the good fulcrum point, if you're too high up on the stick, a good way to do it is just hit the pad and like try to just drop the stick and like let it bounce. If it doesn't bounce at all, you're probably too high up on the stick. So you start moving back a little bit, and you'll start to notice that, oh, okay, the stick's starting to bounce a little bit. If you go too far back, you'll see it just sort of dies. Start moving the stick up a little bit. Oh, I'm starting to get a little bit of bounce here. And all I'm doing is just like dropping the stick and just kind of hanging on to it just enough to allow it to bounce. Okay, all right, starting to feel a little sweet spot there. Okay, that's a pretty good spot. And shockingly enough, boom, check out where my index finger and my thumb are on the Vic Firth product, right there on the American flag. There you guys go. All right, very good. And this is called a match grip. Now let's talk about, that's their fulcrum point. And let's just move, and all we do is we wrap the rest of our fingers around the stick itself. And what we want to be doing, I'll get up close here, is you notice how all the fingers are like on the first pad? Every single one is on that very, very first pad of your finger. So that's this portion here, here, and here. And the reason is you want to have full range of motion as you do this. All right, and that is the basic way to hold the stick. Now these three fingers are literally they're not gripping. You're not gripping the stick like this. You're having a fulcrum point, which is, you want it enough that it's not gonna, pull out, but at the same time, you don't want it to be like gripping it so it's like a death grip on a, don't take my sticks kind of thing. You want it to have a little bit of free range of motion inside the stick, all that sort of thing. And the rest of the three fingers should be very, very loose. They're not gripping, they're just on, if that makes sense. They're just on the stick, they're not gripping the stick. Now as we go to our position on the drum itself, or in this case, our pad, I'll get this and see if I can get like a really good angle. Gently, but firmly grip the stick, indeed. You place it on the pad, and the way that you want to generally play a drum is in the center of the drum head. In this case, it would be just in the center of the pad that we have here. And you don't want it flat against it. You don't want it too high. And you don't want it too low. Usually about 2 fingers up, like if you do a 2-finger gap, is about the angle that you want. And then if you would match the same thing with the left hand, which by the way, on match grip, it's exactly the same thing. Right and left hand do the same thing on match grip. Place it on the center of the drum, and if you noticed, we're kind of making a 90-degree angle. My other biggest issue when I try to drum, firmly gripping, you guys could probably see exactly like, we're almost taking up a quarter of the pie. That's our basic position. That is how we hold the drumsticks. And again, it's all about having this here, fluid range of motion, and these fingers are on, but they're not actually doing anything yet. If that all kind of flows together for you all. Now let's talk about a stroke after a sip of coffee. All right, ladies and gentlemen, how to approach the drum. Every single drum stroke, every single drum motion is a combination of 3 separate motion points within your body. You have arm, which is initiated from your elbow. So this is the arm motion. Notice how like my wrist and my fingers are not moving in any way. That's the arm motion. Then we have our next pivot point, which is our wrist. This would be the wrist motion. Noticing that there is nothing moving with the arm and nothing moving with the fingers. And then finally, the finger motion, which you notice the wrist isn't moving, only the fingers. Now the way that the fingers work is I'm holding onto the grip here, and the fingers are coming out along the stick, and yes, at a full range of stroke, oh God, my pinky can't touch it, but you still need to be able to angle it to come back down. So that's the finger motion. So the 3 points of motion are arm, wrist, and fingers. And you can think about these in terms of power and speed. All right, there's things that are for power and there's things that are for speed. You can think of arm as the slowest, but the arm is also the most powerful. So power 3, speed 1 is your stat. Wrist is power 2, speed 2. Fingers are power 1, speed 3. There's kind of your stats. So you do a combination of all 3 of those things to do every single drum stroke. A basic drum stroke, when you approach this, there's 2 things that need to happen. You do a full range of motion, with you use every part of all 3 of those things. As I slap this microphone back here. So you do arm motion, wrist, and fingers. Now, a good way to think about it is initiation from the elbow as almost like the back part of a whip. As your elbow comes down, then your wrist starts to move, and then your fingers do the final hit. All those things together for a full drum stroke. Now, there's one other thing that you could probably see that's happening as we play on the screen here, is that we are not allowing the stick to stop on the drum head, or in this case, the drum pad. We're not burying the stick. We're not just going, And that becomes the next portion, which is probably the most important part about drumming, is how to get rebound and controlling that rebound. So we'll talk about where does that come from. Put this down right there. So as we play through a single stroke, we start to get those basic motions that you can think of it like a whip. It starts from the elbow, goes all the way down, and the crack of the whip at the very end. One continuous motion, one continuous motion. Now when we get the rebound that comes off of that, where's that coming from? The idea is that you get the stick in motion in velocity, remember that term, velocity of the stick. And then once you get to just above, like where the stick hits, then you almost want to relax all these muscles. Enough that you can hold it there. It's like the difference of you could hold your arm out, and you could try this at home or wherever you are right now at work. You can hold your arm out. Now there are some muscles that you're using while you're holding your arm here, but at the same time, you're not tense all the way up your arm to hold it there. There's only a few muscles that you have to use, like up in the shoulder, in order for you to keep your arm at this, at this height. Same thing goes when you play the drum stroke. Utilize muscles, but then you want to be relaxed at that point to allow for the rebound to happen. Now, for a full range of motion or a repeated pattern, meaning that we want to play the same stroke over and over, you're going to basically follow the stick back up. If you have that good fulcrum point right there on the stick and allowing that bounce to happen, the stick's going to want to go back. And I always do, thinking about the rebound, if I give the stick a motion and then let go, you see how much the stick would flip 25 times, getting the rebound off the pad. And the only thing that's stopping that rebound from happening is you. You are the only thing that's stopping that rebound from happening. So what you want to do is be able to control that rebound in such a way that you're not hitting the drum, pulling it back up, pushing the drum, pulling it back up, pushing the drum, pull it back up. You're only doing half of that. You're throwing it down, and then your hand and your arm and your wrist, and the 3 motions that we talked about before, are just sort of following the stick back up to its original start point. That's rebound, and that's huge. So let's reiterate a little bit. We got our parts of the stick, we got our butt, we got our shaft, we got our shoulder, and we got the tip. We have our fulcrum point of where we're holding it, which is in between the index finger. Boom, 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 just like that. Index finger there. Remember, no gap here. We don't want any gap. It's not this is the way you hold a violin bow, right? It's not that way. It's inside your hand, so it's definitely there. And then what we want to do is a thing of, well, you're throwing the stick at the drum, but not letting go. Exactly. Controlling the rebound. Now, the funny thing is when you do this, you can get a pretty loud stroke. You know how much force I'm actually putting into that? You could hear that on the mic, I guarantee you. That's on a drum pad too. You get a very loud stroke, but it's not because I'm, you're not going crazy with it, right? You're letting the stick do most of the work, and that goes back to that term of velocity. But yes, you're throwing the stick at the drum, and you're allowing the drum to give you the rebound back. Now, There's a couple different ways to do rebound, and it depends on what techniques that you're doing. And we'll go back to the portions of what we talked about: arm, wrist, and fingers. Not a lot. Whipping things gets a nice sound. Yeah, it does. All right, so we'll talk about those three things. If you're doing a full stroke and a continuous full stroke, you want to get full range of motion, so you're following that stick back up with the stick's natural physics rebound that you're getting off of the head with your arm, your wrist, and your fingers. This depends on the speed. Remember, we talked about power versus speed. Nice and slow. That rebound also helps with you with the more advanced techniques. You are not wrong, my friend. You are not wrong. All right, so that's a full range of motion. That is just following that rebound. But as we start to get faster, you'll notice there's going to be less and less arm and more wrist. And even faster, there's going to be less and less wrist and more finger. So that's all full range of motion, but you notice how like there's this balance between like we're using a lot of arm, now we're using less arm, more wrist, less wrist, more finger. All about power and that speed, guys. All about power and that speed, but it's all about that rebound control on both sides of the stroke. Now the cool thing that happens when you do this, we're going to bring up a term called legato. Legato is when, and the best way I could like describe this is legato is long and flowing. All right, there's two different legato terms. There's a legato term. Oh no, I kicked the thing off. The trigger. Guys, the trigger. There's two different types. Uh-oh. You're gonna hear a couple like kicks. All right, there's two different types of legato. Afternoon, Raj, how are you? Doing very well today. Yuna, doing very, very well. Hope you're having a great one. I'm gonna get a sip of coffee real quick. Excuse me. I'm getting used to the lapel mic. By the way, Hermie, you see what I did? I brought the coffee up. It got so triggered. It did. It did get so triggered. So check this out, guys. There's two different legato terms. One legato term in terms of like what you're doing for the drum strokes, and there's also a one that you're doing in terms of like musical expression. Legato means that you, again, both of them sort of mean flowing, but this is we're going to talk about it in reference to the stick motion. Legato, you can basically think about it as something that constantly is in motion. It does not stop. There's nothing like this. It doesn't stop up here. There's no stopping points in the middle of that. It's just constant motion between all things. All right. That's legato. And all those things that I was just doing are all legato strokes. Stick is in constant motion. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is the motion itself, because this is where you're going to get a lot of different sounds, especially on like an acoustic kit versus the electronic. Electronic, you're going to get a lot of the same, regardless of where you hit it on the drum head. But we're talking about the angle of the motion itself. Okay, so let's talk about this just a little bit. Where we have that, you got to keep that motion flowing, baby. That's what I'm talking about. So let's go back to our grip, where we have our index finger and our thumb on our fulcrum point as we're playing right here on the drum pad. Legato equals smooth and flowing even with the wind instruments. No, it means the same thing because it is, it's exactly the musical term for it. But there is legato in terms of musical expression is what you're talking about. And then this is legato in terms of what the motion of the stick. But they're both musical terms. They're just used differently for drummers sometimes, because we don't have legato expression on the drums, you know, all that kind of stuff. All right. So anyway, let's talk about the motion. When you do play this, and we talked about this on the angles, do you know it's much harder to play legato on the piano than on the organ? I did not know that. Meaning the same, but application is different. Exactly. Exactly right. So I think that's why nobody was like, well, let's call it something different. No, it means the same thing. Just the application is different. We talked about our like angle, and I could show it off again. It's kind of like a quarter of the pie where they're both there. And we talk about our motion of how the stick comes up and the motion how the stick comes back down. And what's really important, and I'll see if I can get it at a good angle, is that the stick goes straight up and straight back down. You don't want any angles coming off to the side like this, or angles coming off to the side like this. All those kind of things. Piano is sometimes classified as a percussion instrument, after all. It is. It actually is. You are correct about that. Because it is technically hammers hitting things. Organs and wind or piano are technically percussion. Organs are wind. Yeah, exactly. You have a pie and you didn't invite me. I did invite you. It was on Twitter. Where are you? All right. So check it out. So the range of motion, you want to make sure that the stick is going straight up and straight back down. And that all comes down to where your grip is and the purpose of that grip and how all things are going to be happening. Now, I'll just show you real quick. We're going to do something what's called the American grip, which is the most common way to hold the drumstick or in the motion of the drum itself. This is, if you're just beginning and you just want to pick up the drumsticks, this is the way that you probably should start. Just quite frankly, you should start with the American grip. Now with the American grip, all you have to remember is you see this little gap that we have? You guys see the gap right there? That's also where your stick comes up. It comes directly in line with that gap. Now let's talk about this just a little bit when it comes down to power. This is a really, really good angle. I'm kind of showing you right here. I want you to notice that even though my arm is in this position and it looks like it's sort of like cockeyed, if I put it straight, you'll notice that there's a direct line between elbow, wrist, finger, fulcrum to tip. This is all a giant extension of the arm, but you don't want to have it be off to the side like this, because then there's not a direct line. You can see, like, if you come down through this point, there's like, you move this way and then off to the stick. Any point that you have this like sort of like zigzag line between your elbow and the tip of the stick, you're losing power. You're losing a lot of that ability to get a good stroke out of the drum. So straight up and down, comes up through the gap, and then a straight line to the tip of the stick. And then following that rebound. Boop, boop. There you go. Now, the other thing that you'll get a lot of, that explains that. What's that exactly, Mechadon? So, moving right along though. So now we have that, and this is called match grip, and for obvious reasons, the match American grip. There'll be a lot of terminology coming on there. It's going to be at the end of the course, there's going to be a big test, so you guys got to remember all that stuff. I hope you're taking notes. All these things. Oh, sip of coffee. I do apologize. I think the lapel mic picks up a little bit more than normal. Like normally I talk into a mic like this, and then I'd lean over here if I had to like cough or something like that. Why, I never felt like I could strike well. Yeah, and it's probably because there was like some sort of angle that you were off. A lot of times you get like this. You know, I've definitely seen players come in there like, yeah, I'm jamming out, man. Totally rocking, but look at the motion. Look at the whole thing. Look at how all this stuff is together. That's a huge angle difference that's there. You'd rather take your music theory 2 midterm? I'm just kidding. I'm not going to there's no test on this. This is just about curiosity knowledge, or if you want to learn how to play drums. There's a lot of stuff, man. So, all right, cool. So remember, straight motion, and again, the whole physics all the way through. And then we have the arm, wrist, and fingers getting the rebound, and you want the stick to go straight up and straight back down. No angle stuff like this. Oh, your wrists are locked at a 90-degree angle. That's a little bit difficult, but not impossible. Not impossible. This is just the I would say the more basic ways to do things for the general population, but certainly not impossible. There's a lot of different techniques that are out there. American match grip. Back to it, guys. American match grip is the right hand and the left hand. The right hand and the left hand are matched together. Shockingly, they're matched. It's crazy. All right, and then there's another grip out there called traditional grip. I love talking about this, and this is actually one of my favorite grips that I do. Traditional grip is, you'll see this with a lot of like drummers on the left hand. They'll have like all this stuff. Oh, what is this drummer's doing? This crazy stuff with his left hand, doing all this. Let's talk about the origins of why this even exists. Back in the day, back in the old day, you probably have seen, you know, drum and fife bands and all this kind of stuff. Just hard to figure out when first starting. Oh yeah, big time, big time. Drum and fife bands had these sling drums, and the way the snare drums would go is they would be over top of one shoulder, and the drums would kind of be at this big angle like this, just hanging right there. And what happened was they would go to play, and the right hand feels kind of fine on that, you know, right hand feels pretty good. You can still, and remember this, guys, and this is going to apply a lot when we get to the drum set. That straight up and down motion that we just talked about, it has to do with the angle of what drum you're playing too. Like if I go straight up and down here, think about it like pull. Where the stick is going to want to go on the rebound is going this way, right? So if the drum's at this angle, straight up and down is actually kind of like this. But we're still, all we're doing is adjusting our, I know this is jumping a little bit. We're adjusting this part of the arm to make the rest of this line up properly for whatever drum that we're playing. All right. Now let's talk about why traditional grip exists. If I would put this arm, this portion of the arm, in the right position to play on the surface properly, used to be a drum and pipe fan for a little bit. My dad plays the pipes. So I played the tenor drum for a bit. Nice. I think my favorite is the piano and organ. Nice. So check this out. If I put my sticks in the right position, this arm feels pretty comfortable, but this one, oh my gosh, that's the right position for the drum. But oh, wow. Go ahead and do that. If you're at home, go put your arm up like this. So your elbow is like at your ear, and just hold it there and see how good that feels. It's like, oh, what the heck is going on, right? So it was like, all right, well, we need to figure out a way. We need to figure out a way to be able to play on this surface, but not have our arm in this weird position. So that where came a traditional grip. The traditional grip comes from, and I want you to notice one thing. Number one, fulcrum point remains exactly the same, but instead of our hand being over top of the drumstick, our hand is going to be underneath the drumstick. Now, what's interesting when you do this, thank you very much for the host, really appreciate that. And when we do this, our fulcrum point remains the same. So again, and this is only for this brand of sticks, but on Vic Firth, they have a little American flag right there. It's a good fulcrum point, but it's a good reference point as I'm trying to show how to hold the drumsticks. That's where we have our pinch on our index finger and our thumb. But when we do traditional grip, it's going to go in between the gap of this little spot between your thumb and index finger here. But that becomes the fulcrum point. But because our hand is going underneath the drum or the drumstick, we're going to be going forward of the fulcrum rather than behind the fulcrum, if that makes sense. So our fulcrum, when it comes down to traditional grip in the left hand, I will say this. I'll explain all this, guys. I will explain all this. But 90% of the drummers out there are going to be playing as match grip, and that's probably the way they should be. It's a lot easier to learn that way. Our fulcrum point now, though, we place our drumstick in between our index finger and our thumb, and we want to have like a pinch on that same fulcrum point. That's just sort of like put your hand out straight like this, and the stick goes straight into that point right there. And the fulcrum point becomes this motion of a rotation of your left hand. And that's where you get that same amount of rebound, but the thumb's over top and the rest of the hands are underneath. Now, where the rest of the fingers go in this grip is your index finger then gets wrapped. Our clip links still locked or still blocked. You know what? They're probably going to be blocked with MooBot. Let's see. Because I just did put a bot in the channel. I think I do. Permit. Mecha Dom. We should be good to go. There you go. Did you post it and it came out as stars? I'll have to play with that a little bit. All right, back to it, guys. So we have the index finger and the thumb is our fulcrum point. And again, it's just sort of, you put your hand straight out like you're going to shake somebody's hand with your left hand. It goes straight into that gap right there. And the motion becomes this rotational point. This rotational point here. Boop, 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 boop. This rotational point like that. All right, but where our rest of our fingers go is our index finger is going to wrap around the top. It might be cap sensitive on the name. I don't think I turned that on. I'll have to play with the settings a little bit, Mechadom. You can post it over in the Twitch app and the Discord. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So the rest of the fingers are going to do this. Index finger wraps around the top. Then the ring finger, the stick is going to rest, if I can get a good angle on this, is going to rest on the very last pad of your ring finger. Can I get my middle finger out of the way? There we go. Perfect. Now, when it comes down to traditional grip, this is it. These other two fingers don't do jack squat. They don't do anything. But you don't want to be doing this to your audience, if you know what I'm saying. So you wrap the finger, the middle finger goes on top of the stick, and the pinky just kind of gets tucked under right there, right underneath that. Now, when you play the traditional grip, and as the rebound comes down, I'll play this in very slow motion. You come down on the angle, and what you'll see is that this stuff here, these three fingers don't really do anything, and the rebound starts to bounce back up. And the rebound is done by rotation of your left hand rather than this of match grip. Some people may have no problem doing that to the audience. That's also a very true point, man. That's a very true point. All right, so that is the basics of traditional grip. Now here's the big thing. This all exists, and the reason it's called traditional grip is because of the sling drums, because of this angle, this very, very steep angle of like the drums being there. And honestly, when people are marching around, this thing is swinging, whoo, just like crazy, like just constantly swinging left and right, side to side, all the different things. So they kind of just, they're very fluid with it. But as you notice, look where my upper arm position becomes, because there's a grip that's underneath the side of the drum. Big fat open flams too. And there's a whole bunch of other things that I'm doing in there, like diddles and rebound and staccato notes and all this kind of stuff. And we'll stick to the basics that are here. But that is the basics of traditional grip. I quite frankly would not, although I prefer using it, we'll just talk about the advantages and disadvantages of both traditional and match grip. But I probably wouldn't recommend for a brand new student to learn traditional grip. I don't think that's a good way to start in this day and age. There's really no actual need for it. I'm really disappointed I never really got the hang of rolls. It does take some work. It's a magical moment, actually, for every drummer when you first get it. When you first get to that point, when you got your diddles going, you got your roll going, and you're just really working it out and working it, and all of a sudden, oh, I'm doing it. Oh yes! You know, it's just a magical moment that happens. Super, super fun when it does too. All right. Anyway, guys, we're talking about the advantages of the holding of the drumsticks and advantages and disadvantages. So the traditional grip, our hands are no longer matched again, but here's the one thing I want to show you. See, this hand is above the fulcrum point and this hand is below the fulcrum point, but the fulcrum point is exactly the same on both sticks. If you guys can see that. Now the advantages and disadvantages. Number one is that when you play traditional grip, here's the advantages that you have on that. Left hand in particular, because it's the only thing that's really changing or something that's really different. It is insanely windy out. All right, so here's the only thing that's different. Because we have this natural motion and we are underneath of our drumstick now, we don't have to do any kind of crazy stuff like that. It allows us to do this sort of angle thing here, or we could still take the same motion and notice that the wrist position and the wrist position and the finger position don't really change, but because the motion is not a full arm motion going like this, and it's a rotation motion, we can change the angle and still be going straight up and straight down. So if I can get a good angle just so you guys can see this maybe. So I'm changing the angle, not quite. That's a really horrible technique there, but I'm changing the angle, but the stick is still going straight up and straight down. Now what that allows you to do, and this is the primary and really only advantage to traditional grip, is if you have a bead. This one is a circular bead, but there's like acorn tips and there's all different types of things. You get different tones out of the drum based on your rotation. Now you're hitting like just the edge of this tip, you're actually getting more contact point with the drum depending on what portion of the tip that you're getting at. Now this is good if you're doing a lot of like jazz, doing a lot of ghost stroking with your left hand. Because then you could get these nice little like just a really, really very low ghost stroke happening across the drum head with the left hand with traditional grip. And now let's talk about some big disadvantages, because Your only thing that's on top of the stick physics-wise is your thumb. You lose a lot of power. And I was playing a rock gig. I play a lot of like traditional grip. So what's the Discord info? Bang Discord in chat. And I think everybody should have access. Discord. Join the Discord. All right. So I was playing a rock gig, right? And a lot of times you do these like rim shots. And I'll explain that just briefly here too. It's when you hit the center of the drum head and the rim at the same time. You do these rim shots to get a nice loud sound. And that's what you hear a lot of times in the backbeat, like boom, 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 boom. You get that nice like backbeat the entire time. So when you have that backbeat going, and because you only have the thumb that's over here, the impact point is actually quite brutal for your hand. And you can't quite get as loud. So traditional grip gives you a lot of finesse, but not as much power. If you switch over to match grip, now you have all of that arm power, you have all of this, and you don't have what we talked about before, which is, you know, slightly off. It's there. Things aren't exactly straight. Left hand is not quite exactly straight. You can notice that like as the power comes down, it does branch off to an angle this way. Now you do sort of make a house as you do this, and I want to make sure that I'm very clear about this. It's about power all the way through to your hand. So when I put it exactly straight, I want you to see that exactly straight is not straight, right? You guys follow what I'm saying here? So I'm putting the stick that's like directly underneath and it's pointing straight through here. But if I do that, look what happened to my wrist. We're actually losing a lot of power because there's a zigzag right here. So straight is actually like this slightly. This is the most accurate way to get straight power all the way to the end of the tip of the stick. So again, there you go. But again, this is where like you do lose a little bit of power because you're not getting, this motion is a pull motion rather than like a push motion. So pulling takes a lot more power to get that great backbeat off there. And funny enough, this little pad that's here, which by the way, this pad on my hand is like ridiculously stupid, like a lobster claw, man. Like that muscle has been like complete over the years. It's like a bodybuilder, it's like a hand bodybuilder. It's almost like gross. But yeah, because of that impact point of playing really hard, I've actually had this break open and start bleeding during a gig. So during a rock gig. So I will make sure that for rock gigs, I play match grip a lot of times because we're just doing, you know, getting a little backbeat the whole way through anyway. And I talk about, there's a few different grips that we can use for that too. All right, so that's what a beard sounds like in a lapel mic. Okay. Those are our basics for the strokes. So let's talk about advantages to the match grip. Match grip does two things for us. Hey, that's about how my thumbs always are. Oh yeah? Just like the grip. All right, so the advantages to match grip are, number one, and I think this is an important one, especially for beginning students or anybody that's just starting or wanting to learn how to play drums. It's a lot easier to get a grasp of this and understand how that rebound works on the drum head. Now, that's one of the advantages. The other advantage is all about the power. You sure it wasn't metal since you drew blood? It's totally metal. It was totally metal because I drew blood on it. All right, so you get a lot more power. You get more bang for your buck basically with a match grip. You get a lot more motion with a lot less effort. Your impact points, your hand, you're now playing on the soft part of your hand. You're not playing on like knuckles and other things where all fulcrum points are happening. So you're getting a lot more bang for your buck. The other thing that you get, especially when you start moving over to the drum set, is you get a lot more mobility. Because this requires me, look how far out my arm has to be to hit this. Versus that. So it's a lot easier to move around the drum set as well. There's a big advantage there. All right, so mobility and power are the things that you get with this. The things that you sacrifice by switching over from traditional grip to match grip is those little finesse points that, quite frankly, are They're important for a lot of feel things, but they're not a necessity. They're like they're that final spice that you throw in the soup. It's like that little extra thing when you start taking some basic stuff and then just give it a little bit of spice. All right, cool. Those are the basic grips, guys. So we have traditional grip. We have American match grip. Those are basic ways to hold the drumsticks. It's pretty easy, right, guys? No problems. To reiterate and to go through, every single motion has a portion of arm, wrist, and fingers. And again, arm is power 3, speed 1. Wrist is power 2, speed 2. Fingers are power 1, speed 3. So fastest is fingers. Wrist is a little bit less, and arm is even less, but it's got a lot more power. All right, last thing about the strokes themselves that I do want to talk about. It's a very misconstrued thing, and it happens with a lot of drummers. They're like, yo, you got to play this rock song, play this metal tune, right? And I'll see instant change of everything. Everything goes from like this nice, oh yeah, I'm just playing on a pad and I'm working on my diddles, I'm working on my rolls, I'm working on all this stuff. Everything's working out pretty well, I'm getting all this. And then instantly play the rocky again. Everything goes out the window. You go with this death grip. Oh, squeeze the drumstick. And you've all seen that drummer. Everybody's seen this drummer, right? Oh God, it hurts to even do. It hurts to even play. And even on the pad, you can hear the difference. Gotta get some cabinets built. Later, Prof. Later, Bongo. And thank you very much for the tip, dude. I really do appreciate it. All right, so we still want to use the same things, but we want to talk about what makes a drum loud when you hit it. What makes a drum loud when you hit it? This is always the big question. A lot of people and a lot of students that I've had answer with the same question, that question with the same answer, and that is, it's how hard you hit it. This is actually wrong. It's not how hard you hit it. It may correlate a bit to how hard you hit it, but really what it is it's about velocity. It's about the speed. Remember, this is a physics game, guys. Remember, drumming is a physics game. It's all about the speed of the stick when it hits the surface that makes it loud. Now I can do, and here's the example that I always show to students. All right, I'm gonna hit this pad with tons of force, my entire body weight, and I'm gonna do it with as much muscle power as I could possibly do. In fact, I'll even stand up when I hit it, and I do this. Knock the pad over and everything. That was a ton of power I just put into that. Whole body weight. The entire body weight hit that, pushed the pad over, did all that, but it was a super soft note. Why was it soft? Everybody goes, oh, it's slow. I was like, now we're talking. It's about velocity. So all these things with technique, and to make things loud, it's not about how much power you put into it. It's how fast you get the stick to move when it hits the drum. Now, the velocity is done with a lot of different ways. Remember I talked about that speed thing? Here's your secret to velocity. So when you see a metal drummer with a death grip, they're working 20 times harder than they have to with the finger motion. So I'll give you an example, and it's the other one I do. I'm going to say, all right, now I'm going to play underneath this height, underneath this stick height. So my stickers are going to come to there. But I can get a very, very loud note. Why am I going to get a loud note coming out of that? It's because I'm putting a lot of velocity. I'm getting it to move very quickly. Now, how do we do all that? It's all about that proper motion of arm, wrist, and fingers. Now, this is where it gets a little difficult to do a sort of general lesson. It's not about power. It's about speed, logged and noted. Is exactly right. It's all about the velocity. So the thing is how do you work on that? It's a good way to think about it. Thank you very much, Grubus. Thank you so much for the host. Really appreciate that. And I got to fix my alert. It's a little funky. I'll have to work on that. But anyway, yeah, guys. So it's about velocity. It's about the speed that you get working. Now, how do you do that? It's about the right balance. How do you practice getting there? And this is one where the one-on-one lesson really, really helps. By the way, if anybody is like working on doing drums, guys, get over on the Discord, do a video, and I'll be happy to like answer like, oh, this is what you need to work on. You need to do this. Because it's hard for me to say like, well, everybody should do this. Not everybody does the exact same thing to get to the same results. Everybody has like this one thing that's not working, this other thing that is. It's like, oh, well, this person's just, they're just like total arm. They're not doing any wrist. The other dude's like, I'm good. You know what I mean? He's all wrist. So I can't be like, well, you all need to use more arm or you all need to use more wrist. It's sort of an individual basis. But that velocity and that speed comes down to kind of a simple fact. Nice fluid motion between all three parts of every stroke. Arm stroke, wrist stroke, and finger stroke. And you could think about it as like there's an imaginary guy that's holding right back here. He's holding holding the elbow, and he cracks a whip. The cracking of the whip. It's just that your arm is the whip, and there is the crack at the very end of that tip. So very slow motion. Oh, there's a dude back here. Whoa! And notice, hey, look at that fingers. See that? See how much finger motion that we had there? That's a big part. Also, wrist coming down. So here's the whole thing. It's like, oh. There's the wrist, there's the fingers. Oh my God, look how far back I am too. It's like way back over here. You come down, arm, wrist, finger, and getting all of those things in the proper, at the proper timing. And with that straight up and down motion that we talked about. Oops. Straight up and down. Boop, 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 boop. So that velocity comes in with having that whip motion going. Now the cool thing is that you don't have to do this full range of motion. By the way, I'm like scratching my back at the top of that stroke. I don't know if you guys can see it, but literally the stick is way back here. I'm hitting this microphone behind me. And that, oh shoot, move that mic. That'll be fine. But you do all those things, but you can do it in a very smaller fashion. So instead of like having the whip being cracked to like way, like a huge motion, you can do it in a very small motion. You notice the stick comes to about this point, but I'm doing the exact same thing. Here's the whole motion. But again, the fingers at the end make a huge difference in terms of that velocity. Huge difference. So velocity, arm, wrist, fingers, getting all those things in the proper proportions, get that nice crack of the whip, all those types of things. Now we talked a little bit about, let's go backing up just a little bit. We talked about legato and legato strokes, but we didn't talk the converse one, which is a staccato stroke. Legato, again, is very fluid. So you're gonna be getting constant bounce. It's always gonna be up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. Staccato stroke is just the opposite. We're in a super high wind risk area. I can hear it. It's crazy. It's super windy out. A staccato stroke, and this is the same thing, it means the same thing when it comes down to musical expression for other instruments as well, but it means a short stroke or a sharp stroke. In this case, a staccato stroke just basically means we're going to take this hit and we're going to stop the stick in a down position versus letting it come all the way back up. Now the staccato stroke is kind of a misnomer. All right, so the first thing is you still get rebound. I want everybody to remember that. You still get rebound. Now the thing is you're controlling that rebound. You're controlling that rebound to not go all the way back up. Remember when I said like the stick is going to want to do like flips? You hit this, it's going to want to flip over several times. The only thing that stops it is you. Now in this case, we want to stop the stick on a down position. We want to do that as efficiently as possible. When you first start working on staccato strokes, the staccato stroke itself is something that people tend to be a little bit over aggressive with. They're like, stop the stick down. Okay. First of all, we didn't bury the stick. You notice that? That's one of the first things that happens quite a bit. People bury the stick right into the drum head. We don't actually bury the stick. We do get rebound. We just don't let it rebound super far. Now, the way that we do that, you got taken out by ice chunks, branches being dislodged from trees from the wind. Holy crap. Whew. Yeah, what is with this weather today, guys? This weather today is crazy. All right, anyway, dudes. So the staccato stroke. We're coming down with a staccato stroke with a normal thing. We actually let it rebound just a little bit. And then all you do for a staccato stroke is squeeze it just enough to have it stop. That's it. That's all that I did. And as soon as it stops, you want to go immediately back to the relaxed position. So I'm not like, and I'm not gripping it. I'm not in death grip. And there's another little trick that I use a lot for staccato strokes too. To keep it, again, it's not about tension. Well, it's about tension and release a little bit, but it's not about being super tense with it. Pray for our internet. Uh-oh. Are we doing okay with the internet right now? All right, anyway. So it's all about being as relaxed as you can and honestly using as little tension as possible to get the proper motion of the stick. Remember, this is your extension. This is the thing that makes the sound. This is the thing that plays the drums, not the shoulders, not the buttocks, all these kind of things. So check this out, guys. What I'm doing is we talked about getting that good rebound. And remember I talked about that good angle position of like 2 fingers coming off of this? What I actually do is I do a very, very slight, I'll see if you can show this. I roll the hand slightly over top when I play a staccato stroke. And what this does is it makes the rebound less optimal. So it makes it so this doesn't want to go as much that way as if it was here. So I'm actually doing a slight change when I play a staccato stroke as with the grip. This is when I hit it, I roll just ever so slightly over top to make the rebound less optimal. You guys see that? So this is like full rebound here. And all I do for staccato stroke is I just make it less optimal by moving my hand just ever so like this. That's it. It's a very small motion, but that little bit of motion takes away this fulcrum and makes it a little bit more like it wants to stop. So instead of it staccato stroke of being squeeze and just grip it, it becomes like a motion of I'm a little bit rolling over top of it, just ever so slightly to unoptimize the rebound points to a stop point. So those are 2 basic points, legato and then staccato. Now you may also ask yourself, why would I ever want to play staccato stroke? It seems like that's inefficient. Makes a little bit more sense that all strokes come from up here rather than everything starts from here, because the first thing you have to do before you play a note, if you start from here, pick the stick up. What if we take half of that away and start with our sticks up here? Interesting. Interesting. I'm doing half the work now versus this. Why would you want to play a staccato stroke? Well, the reason is that not all strokes are the same. Not all strokes are the same. And we'll talk about something very briefly. Again, not about the exercises that go into it yet, but about the portions that why you want to play a staccato stroke. You want to play a loud note followed by a soft note, right? If you do this, right, you have to like slow it down, because remember about velocity, guys. Remember about velocity. You have to slow it down in a drastic format to do that. And well, what if the tempo of the song doesn't allow you to do that? Well, then you have to have the stick a little bit lower, and that's where the staccato note comes in. Now I can play a soft note right after the loud note. And then you get these accent points as you go through that. So accents would be the staccato notes and everything else is legato. That takes a lot of practice. I'm not gonna lie. And then you get, well, once you nail it, you start putting the 16th notes that we talked about earlier together, and you get yourself a little thing called a wipeout drum solo. And all of that is just 16 notes with accents, staccato, and legato strokes. Watch what the left hand does. It doesn't do much at all. It does not do much at all. Awesome. All right, that's the basic strokes. Wipeout, yeah. You like that? One more time? One more time for the internet? For the internet. Very good, man. Very good. So those are our basics of holding the sticks. We'll reiterate all the things. Stick parts, we have the butt of the stick, we have the shaft of the stick, we have the shoulder of the stick, we have the tip of the stick. We have our fulcrum point, which is about this point, but the best way to find out, start hitting the pad. Let that bounce happen. Find where the stick wants to bounce as much as possible. We talked about the 3 elements of any stroke, which is arm, wrist, and fingers. All of these things all together make up for a stroke. We talked about match grip, and we talked about them being American grip. Remember, American grip is when the stick comes up directly in this gap. It comes up in the gap. That's the American grip, guys. And there are purposes for all grips that are out there. All right, and then secondly, we talked about what makes it loud, or thirdly, and D, and finally F. I mean, it's about velocity, it's not about power. It's about velocity, not power. It's important to do. Those are all those things, and we talked about legato and staccato strokes. Those are very, very basic stuff. Now, if you're going to practice this, all right, so great, I understand the concepts. You've been talking about it for an hour. You've been talking about it for an hour, Prof. What do I do to work on all these things? Number one, get your grip right. Get your grip correct. Find that nice balance point. Make sure you're in the right position. One of the hardest things, we'll talk about what is like technique, all right? Technique is what you use when you're not thinking about how you're using it. Any changes to technique are the hardest thing to break. Bad habits are the hardest thing to break. I wonder if I can get a Clipmaster badge from a non-partner. Well, we'd have to get a lot of views on it, I think. Get a grip, man. Get a grip. So you get your grip, make sure your position is correct, practice in front of a mirror. That is one of the best things that I can say to every early first drummer. Practice in front of a mirror, making sure that your stick is going straight up and down, making sure you're not having weird angles on here or here or here. Because once you start playing like this, I guarantee you, you'll be like, okay, I gotta do that. All right, gotta do that. Gotta make sure that I put this. Remember the angles that we talked about? That like quarter of the pie when you're playing? Mobile typing, yeah. Get a grip, and damn it, I gotcha. So make sure your stick's going straight up and down. Make sure we don't have like any inner things. So you're not hugging a tree. This is what we call tree huggers. Tree huggers, and then the inner ones. Tree hugger, inner ones. Now, what about that 45? So if you take the center, it's 45 degrees here, 45 degrees here, or together, 90 degrees. Traditional grip and match grip don't make a difference because the stick still does the exact same thing. Don't look at my arm, look at the stick. The stick does the same thing regardless of how you play. So yes, we talked about all that, and velocity, not power. Velocity, not power. I can't stress that enough because that causes a lot of things. When you're practicing it, practice in front of the mirror. Make sure your stick is doing that. You're in the right position. Get that to be your technique. Get that to be the thing, the way that you play when you're not thinking about how you're playing. You just you wake up and get a cup of coffee, you know. Oh. Man, I had a late night last night. Oh, man, who's ever watched placement matches? Let me tell you. Man, let's get down to practice, right? Get that going. First stroke, that's your technique. Whatever you just played when you're not thinking about it is your technique. Making those changes are going to be very difficult. So for a first-time player, play in front of the mirror. Make sure you're doing all those things correctly. Make sure you have your checklist of like, is my stick angle correct? Am I holding it in the right place? I'm not doing any weird stuff like this, like playing with like I'm holding back here with these two fingers. You see that? I see that a lot. There's no fulcrum point there. You're not gripping the stick like crazy and just banging away at it. You're using that fulcrum point. Are you using fingers? Are you using wrist? Are you using arm? Are all these things all together? Those are very important things. So make sure you get those things right. And then once you start getting that down, don't worry about speed at first. Just really concentrate on asking yourself one question as you start doing this. Say, all right, I'm just playing a few notes, right hand, playing a few notes, left hand. Okay. Start like thinking about, because you don't have to think about too much what you're actually playing in terms of notes right now. You're just like, okay, I'm just going, you know. You go, am I pulling the stick up, or is the stick coming up by itself? That is actually a technique to get a little louder stroke, yeah, 100%. I don't recommend it though, as drum set players, and for a strange reason. You guys ready for it? You see this little part right here, the shoulder of the stick? When we start getting to full drum set playing, which I really can't do, you know, super loud, by the way, guys. You start getting, this starts to chip a little bit. You can start hitting the edge of cymbals, and this wood starts to flake off. This wood starts to flake off a bit, and you turn it around to get that nice, like, oh, play with the butt of the stick to get a little bit more meat out of it, right? And what ends up happening is you actually blister you blister your fingers on all of those little all those little, all these pads here. And so, yeah, it's one of those things from experience. Also, you want to know one of the worst thing on a gig ever? This is the absolute worst thing that happens on a gig. You're rocking out, you're going crazy, you're moving around like, oh, I mean, you're doing full range of motion, you're playing like this, and you play one stroke and you clip your ear just a little bit. Oh! Oh, dude. It's like if anybody's ever flicked your ear, think about like 10 times that velocity, like with like whacking it with a stick. It doesn't feel very good. Yep. So that's some good stuff, guys. That's some good stuff. Those are the practice tips of getting everything started. And ask yourself again, right back to it. Ask yourself, are you pulling the stick up or is the stick coming up by itself? Understanding and feeling that rebound is important. Once you're going, okay, I'm not pulling the stick up, I'm letting the stick bounce by itself, just watch your arm. Look in front of the mirror. Watch yourself as you play and go, am I using fingers? Am I using wrist? Am I using arm? Especially at a slow tempo. Is your stick curved? My stick? No, my stick is perfectly straight. If it looks curved, it's because it's a GoPro, and it's like a wide angle lens. So like if you could, yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a wide angle lens. No, it's totally straight. I can, yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's a weird camera thing. Yep, it's a camera thing. It's a wide angle lens. That's why. You could see like all the way over there. Like the range that I have, this is full arm motion here, guys. And I'm like still on camera. And that's even cut off a little bit, which is nuts. All right, so back to rebound and practice tips. Start playing. Are you getting rebound? Are you pulling the stick? Getting your tongue caught in the hi-hat. The hi-hat stings too. I could ask you why you're sticking your tongue in the hi-hat. I was trying to go for a unique sound, you know. I figured like a little bit of moisture, a little bit of a flesh inside these two metal plates that clap together. Yeah. That being said though, and you're not half wrong, I have pinched a little bit of finger in the hi-hat. Ooh, that one's not good. Took a clip of it because perspectives are moving. Yeah, it's a fisheye lens, yep. Exactly. But the cool thing is you could see everything, that's the amazing part. You could see everything all the way to the edge and everything. So it's super the right camera for this. All right, guys, that now I would say concludes on how to hold the drumsticks. You like my little Mythbusters thing? Like what are we doing? Don't kink shame. Yeah, don't kink shame. I'm really into hi-hat tongue. Oh my God, they ripped out Rect Hammer for Global. Really? Wait, what? I see it. Well then, trying to keep Twitch a little bit more positive. Guys, I'd like to thank you very much for joining me. If you guys are brand new out there, I see a lot of familiar names, which I really do appreciate you coming over to the Professor Woodshed streams. I hope you guys did enjoy. We had 2 live lessons today. I think the next bit we'll do, I want to do some performance stuff. I just want to make sure, man, it's going to be a lot easier when I get that kit. But I do want to do some performance things, and we'll also do some exercises. Twitch loves us. I know they totally do. We have a rect emote, so, you know, there's that too. Hope you guys enjoyed it, guys. I hope the sound was good. I'm going to do a lot of review. Remember to, if you want to do bang YT in chat, that'll take you over to the YouTube channel. Guys, make sure you follow over the YouTube as well. I don't know. Some of the stuff that we'll do here, I'll try to cut it down and edit it, but I'm definitely way more used to doing live and with the live interaction point than I am with pre-recorded stuff. But I will try to cut up some of the lessons today and get that stuff over there. But I will also be doing some off-stream recordings for a little bit more in-depth information. But guys, thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you guys enjoyed the Professor Woodshed live lessons, how to hold the drumsticks and all this kind of stuff. But guys, thank you so much for joining me. You have been a fantastic audience. If you guys have any questions, by the way, get over on the Discord, start asking questions. I'll be taking a look at it. GG Strum. I agree. Guys, thank you so much. Does pinching your flesh in the hi-hat anything like slamming your fingers between 275 plates on a yeah. Yeah, it would definitely hurt. It would definitely hurt. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you really did enjoy it. We will be doing more. And yeah, we'll see you guys next time. We'll see you later, everybody. Oh, thank you very much for the tips and everything, too. Really do appreciate that as well. It's a little loud. Anyway, guys, have a great one. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.